Yay, we're live. So we want to say hi out there. Hi to our audience. Hello, everybody. We love it when you join us. Please invite other friends right now or share it to somebody's page. Send it in Messenger. It's a joy to share universal heart wisdom. So, this is a show where all about heart, all about wisdom, and that's what we need at this time. And I chose Universal Heart Wisdom as the title because there is a wisdom that is universal for all of us, and that's the wisdom I care about. And the heart that links us all together as a human family. And we are sponsored by the Love Coach Academy that was created by Scott Katamas. So we want to express our gratitude to the Love Coach Academy. And I'm going to introduce myself, and then Kamila will, and then our guest. Also, Love Coach Academy is all about compassionate communications, Marshall Rosenberg's work, nonviolent communications, and it's so important for relationships. It's all about communication and how we interact and understand each other's needs and feelings. So I'm a love coach, and actually Kamila Love is a love coach. And I started out my career teaching dance and yoga and meditation. I lead adventure retreats in paradise. I went into different forms of working with people's health, both Sufi healing, very spiritual, and then I'm also certified as an Ayurvedic health coach. And I love working with people to design their healthy lifestyle and get on top of their nutrition so it's alive and full of nutrients and superfoods. So we welcome you here. I also love working with groups, families, individuals. We love it when you reach out to us. And here's my co-host, Kamila Love. So, Kamila.
Hey everyone, I'm Kamila Love. You'll find me on Facebook as Kamila Peace, P-E-A-C-E. And I am a love coach with Love Coach Academy. Like Deborah said, we are really enthused by the work that Scott Katamas has brought through in Love Coach Academy. And we both were trained there, and we do work through Love Coach Academy, as well as each having our own separate practices as coaches. So I'm a transformational relationship coach. I'm also trained as a mediator and conflict resolution specialist. So my niche is really helping couples and folks in alternative relationships work through breakdowns that they're having with conflicts and with communication. I love helping intimate relationships resolve the challenges that they're having that often involve communication in one way or another. And I also work with folks on their sexuality and their intimacy and their spirituality, and particularly the intersection between spirituality and sexuality. So that's a little nutshell of who I am. And I'm really, really pleased to introduce our guest today, Miss Riya Yoshida. She is an author and an international relationship coach. So I'll tell you just a tad bit about her, and then we will jump in.
Yeah.
So Riya has supported executives and business leaders around the world to 10 times their love and intimate relationships. She's also a faculty, organizer, and podcast host at ISTA, which is the International School of Temple Arts, where she helps others to integrate their spirituality and sexuality. She holds a master's degree in social organizational psychology from Columbia University, and she currently resides here in San Diego, where I am, and she enjoys hiking, rock climbing, and writing. And I have also taken courses with ISTA, with the International School of Temple Arts. So Riya and I have that community in common. And I'm very, very happy to welcome you to the show today. We're delighted to have you.
Thank you so much. Great to be here, you two, and everyone watching.
Yeah, really. I'm so glad you're here, Riya. So I want to jump in and ask you a question. And I'm wondering, can you give us a taste of your secret sauce when you're coaching a couple in their relationship? What are some of the things that you love to do with them?
So I actually like to play favorites. And I know that's like a shocking statement to make, but what I actually do is I have couples come up with a couple name. So they take their, first two names and they combine the name together to kind of create a third person, a third entity. So I have the couple label and name their relationship and to look at their relationship not as just the two of them, because an actual relationship is not the two people in it, but it's the space between the two people. So I have them label, name, personify this space in between the two of them. And that's who my favorite is. It's the relationship itself. So I radically and fiercely stand for the relationship, for their love, because by the time a couple comes to see me, they're on the brink of annihilation. They're about to give up on their love, and they really support to hold the energy of the relationship, of the third entity, bigger and greater than the two of them can. So that's who my favorite is, and that's my secret sauce when I help.
I love that. I'm relieved. I'm relieved. It makes total sense. When you first said it, I was like, what people would think one or the other, but to have it be the entity of the relationship itself, is very sacred. So I love that. Thank you. Yeah.
Very cool. So you said, Riya, that people often come to you when they're on the brink of breaking up, which is probably pretty common for a lot of people out there that are in the relationship healing world, whether they're therapists or coaches or healers. So, this is something we face. People come to us when they're in shambles. They're just about done. So what should couples do when they're on the brink of breaking up?
Great. So ultimately, what I have couples do is to really understand how messy, complicated, and complex the conflict is, right? Most often than not, they're in a vicious cycle. So no one knows when it started, but someone got offended and retaliated. Often it's unconscious, right? We just have like unconscious patterns running in the background. We don't realize it. We have positive and good intentions that just offend the other person. And so they're in a vicious cycle where one person's retaliating, another person reacts and responds and retaliates, and it just keeps going on, kind of like a zipper, right? It's like, so if you think of two teeth of a zipper as the triggers, they just kind of fit perfectly into each other. And it's like low-grade warfare. So the work that I do is to interrupt the pattern. And that's going to take a little bit of time. Usually I work with a couple for 12 weeks, so for 3 months, to really interrupt the pattern and to have them become more aware of this vicious cycle. Because, sometimes they're fighting about something and it's never about the thing, right? I've had a fight about a spoon. My partner and I have gotten into fights about spoons. But it's not about the spoon, right? It's about the fact that I put all the spoons in the dishwasher and didn't leave him a spoon, and he needed a spoon to use to eat his ice cream. I don't consider him, right? So it's never about the thing. And so when a couple's on the brink of a breakup, it's so, so, so critical and so important to slow everything down. We don't want to make life-altering big decisions when baby steps and small decisions will do. So small successes, small steps, like small successes build confidence, right? So I have couples really slow down, hit the pause button. We're not making any decisions here. If a couple does want to call it quits and transition the relationship, do it from a place that's soft, that's really centered, that's heartfelt, that's amicable, to really dissolve into friendship. We're never going to break up out of a space of anger, resentment, hatred. It's never going to be from that place. So it's about hitting the pause button, slowing everything down. And I'll have couples, take a weekend off away from each other. No contact, no text message, no checking in, just like take a weekend apart. If they are living together, maybe even extend it to a week, to kind of just recalibrate their own nervous system so that they can self-soothe and they can come back to their own energy. So we talked about how, the energy of the couple, the relationship itself is a third entity. There's multiple people involved, right? In any two people in love. So it's about untangling the knots and coming back into a space where we're going to slow everything down, hit the pause button. We're not making any decisions, and that it's really important for a couple to work with a professional, to come to, one of the three of us or the numerous relationship coaches that they resonate with, to be held and have their hand held in that process.
That is so true. It is so important. People need coaches and a third person who's objective and not embroiled in it can really bring clarity to the situation. And as you said, help with the pattern interrupt. Pattern interrupts are so essential. Yeah, because people can be like, and then you create a pattern interrupt and they can look at it from a different angle. Yeah. So how did you get into relationship coaching?
So, my first heartbreak was when my parents got divorced when I was 11 years old. My father's Japanese, my mother's American. We were living in Japan, and their divorce meant, uprooting my childhood in Japan and getting plopped into New Jersey. So Japan to Jersey was a huge culture shock for me. And I was so heartbroken because I was such a daddy's girl that, I made a promise to myself at 11 years old. I was like, I will figure this thing out, if it's the last thing I do. And I had this, really intensity about me that said, hey, if you're going to decide to have children, if you're going to be a couple and come together and be in love and do this family unit, it's like, get your shit together, right? That's what I said at 11 years old.
Yeah.
And so then that put me on a path. My first love, falling in love with another boyfriend, my high school sweetheart, was when I was 14. And that led to, a heartbreak at 16. And I just went on this cycle of exploring relationships myself. And I said, this stuff is actually pretty hard. This is really difficult, right? So it was an innocent beginning as a child to expect my parents to, pull it together. But when I actually lived and as becoming an adult, nothing was more fascinating than the connection between two people in love, because it is unlike any other relationship. It defies the laws of gravity. It defies the laws of physics. Two people in love is it's the first imprint that any baby born, looks up and sees mom and dad, thinks they're God. And, that's how they start the world. And so I really got into relationship coaching. I also studied conflict resolution in my graduate degree and really got to the granular level of how easy it is to misunderstand each other. And, I also studied NVC and I love Marshall's work, and just really, it's just infinite. There's infinite possibilities and infinite resources. It's just so fascinating to me. I'm so relational that it was a natural calling.
Beautiful.
Yes.
Yeah. How easy it is to misunderstand each other. That is, it blows me away over and over again.
Yes.
Even in my personal life, more so than when I'm coaching others. It's I'll be in my own intimate relationship just blown away by how we're misunderstanding each other. And we're both really high level people with a lot of training and a lot of different transformational growth work. And still wow, So I would
you have high level misunderstanding.
Yes, high level misunderstandings that are more complicated to get through. So if you're into talking about it, how do you deal with conflict in your relationship? If you want to share any ways that you navigate that in your own life.
Absolutely. So I, navigate conflict in my relationship very messily. It was messy. I am just as human as you are. This stuff is difficult.
Yes.
I love it.
And it's about having tools and techniques and experience, and I have a certain level of wisdom because I've rubbed my nose in it.
Yeah.
Because I've rubbed my nose in it, I have numerous mistakes under my belt, right? I've really, gone off the deep end. And after heartbreak and heartbreak, you know, going to the edge, I've been to the edges of annihilation. I have been to the depths of my despair. I have explored the corners of my psyche. And that has given me a certain level of breadth and depth to know how deep it can go. The rabbit hole can go. It's like a black hole. Everything just gets sucked into it, right? And because I've done that, and I've gone through it, and I've pulled myself back out, I've done the work. I'm able to now use those tools and those techniques with my partner in my relationship, and I support my clients to do the same. But it's about constantly doing the work, and you know, it's a muscle, right? So Deborah, when you really talked about, you know, why you labeled this universal heart wisdom, it's the wisdom of the heart, and the heart is a muscle.
Yeah.
The heart is a muscle, and how do you build muscles? You break it, you tear it, you rebuild it. And there's this like image that the heart is like delicate, or it's soft, or it's always pink or red, but it is one of the strongest muscles in the body. I mean, it pumps and pushes your blood and your circulation, which is everything. It's your entire nervous system. It's your whole body. It has such deep, deep wisdom. And a broken heart, a cracked heart, is open. It's porous, you know. And really, there's no love without pain. It's letting people in so deeply, so close to you, that they have the power to hurt you. And they also have the power to love you. It's like, you know, if you take too much medicine, it becomes poison. But if you take just a little bit of poison, it's medicinal. So if something is so powerful that it can bring you extraordinary bliss and happiness in the world, it also has the power to crush you completely and bring you into despair.
Yeah.
So the way I navigate conflict in my relationship is to really know that underneath every trigger, every upset, grumble, contraction is, you know, is one side of a coin that is also expansion, it's love, it's connectivity, it's really blissful and just pleasurable. But that it's both and that it's just like we breathe, we inhale and we exhale. It's to know that contractions and expansions happen, and to get curious. Once I can calm my nervous system down. So whenever my partner says anything, you know, if he's lacking a bedside manner and he says something critical or harsh, the first initial reaction is like, ouch. And it's a little bit of a contraction. And that's totally healthy and totally normal, because the nervous system in our body is communicating, hey, pay attention. You know, this isn't what we signed up for. We don't like this. We want things to be easeful. We want things to be pleasurable. We want things to be nourishing and to feel cherished. And to recognize, hey, here's a whole nother human being who has their own wants, their own needs, their own upsets, their own triggers. You know, they were born with different sets of parents, different life, even siblings who grew up under the same parents in the same households have totally different realities. They're totally different in their personality.
Yeah.
So it's bringing a sense of humility, that at the end of the day, do I want to be right, or do I want to be in a relationship?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, really.
And that's really the question to ask, is what am I committed to?
That is such a key question, because I was just thinking, you know, I have a friend who instead of being willing to talk about something, have completion and say, you know, it's forgiven, let's move forward, you know, puts up this big wall and then won't even communicate, in a month or two has gone by. And I notice how much that hurts me when somebody isn't willing to come to the table and deal with the issues. So I'm wondering what you say about when people are avoiding communication, or which to me almost falls into the passive aggressiveness, where there's a lot of control. It's a certain kind of control when a person pulls out and just is like not answering the phone call, not returning the phone call, not willing to show up, especially when it was such a teeny itsy bitsy little glitch, you know. technology thing. What do you say about that when somebody's in avoidance or passive aggressive kind of control issues?
Beautiful. So usually one of the two people in a couple will be that. Because if both of them were, they would just never talk to each other again. So usually between two people who are in love, one person is going to be more of a talker, a speaker. Let's process now. I want to communicate. And if they get upset or grumble, they're a yeller or a shouter or get angry. The other is going to be someone who shuts down and closes up. But it's to recognize that both of them are still equally, or it's valid. It's a valid response to the anxiety, to the trigger, to the upset. And, often the person who shuts down, like there's this example of the turtle, right? So it's the turtle and the hailstorm. And when the turtle shuts down, when they're really upset, or they go silent, or they stonewall, all of that is, they're equally upset as the person who's hailing, right? And that's their coping mechanism, that's their shutdown. And it's about when it hits the storm, when it hits the fan, it's like you have to process that out. So if someone wants to shut down, you kind of have to let them process and go through it, because at that point it's too heightened in their trigger. There's nothing to really be done in that moment other than to create some space. And the person who needs immediate processing or to talk about something can just self-soothe, give to yourself, because ultimately a relationship is a vehicle and you can't get anywhere in an empty tank. Mm-hmm. So you need to both refuel. And only when you've refueled and when you've really come back online, when you're, because basically if you look at the brain, right, if the thumb is the amygdala, it's like pure fear, right? And then these fingers are the frontal cortex, which is reason, ration, consequences, complex thinking. When everyone's triggered, they're like offline. They're just pure fear, right? So the one who shuts down, who's stonewalling, or the one who's yelling and seems like they're angry, it's all fear. It all comes from deep, deep fear of not being able to survive and reproduce, if we boil it all down. And so we want the conscious adult to come back online, to be able to fully talk about it and process it. And if you're hungry, if you're angry, if you're lonely, if you're tired, if you're intoxicated, any of it, not a good time to talk to each other. It's just going to create more chaos.
Good call. Yeah. Yeah. Wow. These are such good tips. And I love your little analogies. You have a lot of good teaching analogies. Like love is like a vehicle and you can't get anywhere. Relationships are like a vehicle. You can't get anywhere in an empty tank. Both people need to refuel regularly.
Yes, regularly.
Really important. How do you help people with the refueling process, right? Because there's sort of the introvert extrovert dichotomy of some people refuel alone. Introverts, need to pull away from people to refuel. Extroverts like to refuel in community. And I've noticed that when it's an introvert and an extrovert in a partnership, there can be a little conflict in how they want to refuel, where one person's like, I need time alone, I'm exhausted. And the other person's like, but I need you. I need connection. I need closeness. Yeah. So curious how you work with people on refueling when their needs are different, and even just generally how to work with people when needs are different, because that's a recurring always thing that pops up in relationships.
Great. You can do it in 10 minutes.
Yeah?
10 minutes. It's to come together and eye gaze for 10 minutes. And to breathe. And, we are all talking heads. We're like, blah, 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 blah. But there is such a huge gap between what one person's experience is and the language they use to really talk about it. And then the other person hears the words and then interprets it. And it's a mess.
Yep.
So it's about stop talking, come back into the body, look into each other's eyes, and breathe. Takes 10 minutes. And, you know, really being able to do that, this transfiguration, and 10 minutes is a long time to just stare into someone else, right? But what's going to happen is there's actually research based on this, that whenever anyone looks at anyone for long periods of time, 5 minutes, right, or more, what happens in the body and in the nervous system and in the unconscious mind, it's like, wow, this person really cares about me. They must care about me because they're staring at me. Because when do we ever stare at each other, right? Considered rude almost.
Right.
You know, it's interesting. I worked with a spiritual teacher in my 20s, and we called that the looking thing. And also in the Eureka Institute that I was part of, we called it the Trespasso. And it was all about, we're looking, it's God looking at God. It's looking into the soul through the window to the soul. And we would do it for hours. Or an hour would be a segment, and then we might take a break in another hour. And it was part of our practices that we did, and it was very deep and very profound. So I love that you bring that up.
Yeah. 10 minutes, right? And then the introvert can go into their corner. The extrovert can go to a party.
Right.
And it's 10 minutes, right? And imagine doing that every day. Every day, 10 minutes out of 24 hours of just looking into each other. Your body's going to relax.
That is so good. Letting go of the words and just relaxing into the eye gazing. So there's true connection. And what would you say, what would a person do if they've lost their eyesight, if they're blind?
Great. So great, beautiful question. It's to then place a hand on each other's hearts. Or an ear onto the heartbeat. And feel. And the quickest way to quell anxiety is connection to another human being. That's how we were held as babies, right? It's to feel, to lay our head against mom's chest, if we were lucky, to be patted. And that is a beautiful reconnection. And so, we get caught up in, well, you said it with this tone, and you promised me this, and you didn't follow through, and you broke this agreement. We get caught up in that, and the mind is designed for your survival. It is not designed for your happiness. The heart is. The heart is designed to guide you and to bring you to true bliss and to true happiness. And so we don't want to cut the head off. We don't want to shame, blame, make wrong the mind. We don't want to do that. We want it to be an integrated experience. But we are top heavy in life in general. And we're disconnected from being a full animal being in our bodies. So it's about helping people when the frontal cortex is offline and you're in pure fear. The mind, there's confirmation bias. You're looking for all the ways to prove that your partner doesn't love you because you're terrified. And so it's about we want to interrupt that pattern by coming back into the body. So eye gazing, if you can't see, feeling each other's heartbeats, breathing together, touch, super slow to allow the nervous system to calm down. And only from that space can we then start introducing words and language back into the mind to wrestle with of, hey, can you have a confirmation bias and look for all the ways your partner does love you? What if you can hire an internal Sherlock Holmes, do some deductive reasoning, and what are all the ways in which you can prove to yourself that your partner does love you? Because what you focus on becomes your reality.
Oh, that's such an important one.
Yeah.
With our negative bias, it's like, I think I've heard different statistics, but maybe we need 30-1 positive input to negative input, or 5-1 positive input to negative input for us to just remember good things about our partner and for us to feel in a good positive space. So that can't be overemphasized, how much our mind attaches to the threats or the perceived threats, and how much extra positive reinforcement we need to put into the space to remember good things about our partner and experience good things about our partner and feel like we're in a positive space with each other.
Yes.
Yeah, appreciations, consciously. I know we have some different charts that are so helpful. And one of them is consciously going into appreciations, and then I think it's mornings where we could say what hasn't worked, and then reassurances. Oh, celebrations about what has truly worked, and then reassurances. To reassure someone. And, I did want to ask, because this is such an important thing. For me, I'm the kind of being who just wants to clear it up right away and feel like there's no karma. If I died tomorrow, it's all clear. I just don't like unfinished business hanging out. And I am definitely oriented toward being a peacemaker. I want to find the common ground. I want to find the empathy and the compassion. You mentioned, solutions that involve the person being close, like in the same proximity. But if the person is far away, yeah, got it. Then, some solutions, because a lot of people are in COVID. A lot of people are,
yes.
We're in Zoom nation, right? Mm-hmm. So, we do we can't put our hands on each other's heart, or if by chance, I'm not implying anybody specifically, but just theoretically, if someone, might not be seeing you, and they can't put you can't put your hands on each other's hearts. I know voice tones are so important. Finding words that can create safety and honor each other's dignity and belonging, which our wonderful person last week was talking about. But can you say more about that, please?
Absolutely. So if you're in person, eye gazing, touching, right? If you're not in person, if you're far away, long distance, or you're in a pandemic and you're quarantining, you can always use voice and sounds. You can breathe in the phone. Or if you're not in communication at all, there's a practice you may have heard of. It's a Hawaiian forgiveness chant, the Ho'oponopono.
I love that.
And you can really go into a meditative state and really picture the person who you're in conflict with or there's tension with, and to really ask for guidance, from the energy of the universe, God, Goddess, whatever your spiritual or religious higher entities are, whether you're an atheist or not, you can ask for the energy of the earth, right? I mean, first of all, it is a miracle that we're alive.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know, 400 trillion and one to ratio that any one of us was born. And we're all standing on this rock we call Earth that's like hurling through space. And so the fact that we're even alive is a total miracle. So it's about getting in touch with the awe of something greater than just how truly insignificant each and every one of us is. And it sounds counterintuitive, but when you can sort of get a felt sense for how insignificant we all are, there's liberation in that, where you can just kind of unfurl your toes, let down your hair, and recognize, like, wow, I'm so grateful to have this opportunity to even fight with someone who cares with me that much, who notices my tone and my facial expressions, or recognizes or notices when I break a promise because they're paying that close attention to me, right? There's always a way to reframe it. Yeah. And for the people who are not in contact, to really go into a meditative state, it takes 10 minutes, 5 minutes. You can YouTube Ho'oponopono, you can YouTube any meditative video and get into the energy and the frequency of letting go, of forgiveness. And sometimes we jump to forgiveness too quickly. I think what you said is spot on, Deborah. You said dignify. And it is really, truly important to dignify the upsets, the hurts, the anguish, the dysphoric feeling, and to give it a voice and to recognize that it's intelligent. Anger, sadness, despair, all of your feelings are intelligent, because evolution's no dummy. I mean, it took trillions of years for us to be who we are today. It's all the successful ancestors who reproduced successfully, right? For us to come here. Every single person who's alive has a mom and a dad. And so the combinations in which we're here, evolution has weeded out what was not necessary. So everything that we're experiencing, the emotions, the thoughts, all of it is for our survival. It's for our well-being. It's for our benefit. And to recognize, wow, that's really intelligent. It's pure wisdom.
It's really good.
That can help.
I love that. Yeah, I just want to say that again, to honor each other's dignity. Yeah, and take people out of boxes. Let people be free. That's why I'm always wanting to, let's find the solution. I think a spiritual teacher once said to me, sometimes big beings will rub each other. It's like two diamonds polishing each other, because we come, with a whole lot of wisdom, but also with our wounds. And when we can, and when we face a challenge, if we stuff it under the rug and don't deal with it, we haven't gotten the gift of what was really there. But when we face that challenge and work it through, we have opened up to a new set of gifts, of probably new ahas and new realizations.
Nicely said.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you.
There's a sort of natural progression, I think, in what you were talking about, Riya, into the topics of evolutionary biology and evolutionary psychology, because I know you've studied those and I know you leverage those in your work, and I feel like we're just starting to crack the ice on that. So I'd love you to dive deeper into what that world's about and how you utilize those technologies with your clients.
Beautiful, yes. So I just want to first preface that I use a multidisciplinary approach in my coaching with couples, because what really matters is for people to get results, right? I stand for transformation. I'm not attached, or I don't care how anyone gets it. I just want them to get it, to be in love, to relax, and to co-create something deeper with their partner, right? The beauty of evolutionary psychology and biology is it's sobering, and it can put things in perspective, where everything anyone ever does, all human nature and all human behavior, is a cost-benefit analysis. And the cost-benefit analysis is like these complex algebra equations that are happening in our minds, in our nervous system, in the whole body. It's the ancestral success that's been passed down through the generations over millions and trillions of years. So this is not an accident.
Yeah.
Right? And so what's really happening underneath it all is we live in a world where animals eat each other. Nature is naturally competitive. And, if you look at the weather, it's fickle, right? I mean, like, this is like life or death. Like, these are some very real aspects to the world. Whether you eat a plant-based diet or not, or NVC, compassionate communication, all of that is consciousness that is above, or it's kind of like taking evolutionary biology, or what we're born with, our gene code, and going beyond it, right? So it's neither one or the other is right or wrong. It's not about it's not those two being in competition, but it's about recognizing that human nature is innately in competition with each other. Because we're 7 billion people, looking for resources, and resources include attention and connection. Attention is one of the biggest commodities. You can only give attention to one thing or person at a time, even if you're in a group. So with innate competition, the three areas in life that are really competitive is, of course, romance, right? Who we choose as partners, partner selection, and getting into a relationship with. Friendships, being accepted in a community, in a tribe, being with your peers or colleagues. and then trade, like what you do for work. So these three areas are just innately competitive because we can only give attention to one thing or a person at a time. And so with that comes a lot of complex calculations that are happening unconsciously because the genes want to survive. And genes want to survive by reproducing itself. However, the genes don't care if you survive. The genes just want to survive themselves. So they actually don't care if you survive, so long as you have an offspring and you die, it doesn't matter to them.
Yeah.
They just want to get you to reproduce. That's the genetic code. And the genes don't care about your happiness. It just wants to reproduce. So it is a very sobering, unpopular, yes.
Yeah, and scary.
It is.
Sometimes scary. Yeah.
Absolutely.
But very real.
It's real. And that's running on that's like the bass or the undertone of a musical masterpiece. It's not the harmonics, it's not the lyrics, it is the bass of the undertone. So NVC or conscious communication or any of the tools that we support our clients with are the high, higher vibration, lyrics and harmony, and it's not the layered undertone.
Yeah.
So I think it's really valuable to recognize that all emotions are information for the nervous system to tell us, are we getting closer to reproduction and gene survival, or are we getting further away?
Yes.
And it's about beating your genes. You want to beat those because they're not designed for your happiness.
Okay. So yeah, beating. I'm thinking like the different practices that we do, daily practices, which we're all about here at Universal Heart Wisdom. Daily practices that are awaken us to the higher frequencies, awaken us to our soul, which is really the highest frequency of who we are.
Yes.
And how we ground it in the body, and then how we interact with others with compassionate communications and different skills we're learning is like the lifeboat. It's like the boat that will save us from the other ship going down, or whatever. So, yeah, when you said we've got to beat the genes, are there some specific methods you use that address that?
Absolutely. So it's about, having the wisdom to not just, to recognize that all human beings, no matter how civilized, we're all animals. And when we can honor and respect and recognize that animals are born with pre-programming, with pre-wiring, there's certain hardware and software that's like a default setting. If you can learn the default setting, learn your own default setting, recognize where you are on the, on your personality. So I come from the school of personality genetic. And personality is not a learned behavior, but it's actually genetic. And it's kind of like a dial on an oven. So yes, you have 0 to 500 degrees, which is a wide range, but the range is fixed. And so your genetic code and your personality comes from your ancestors through evolution, right? And it gets weeded out. And if you take the entire population, it falls on a bell curve. This like bell curve is magical. And you have most people in the middle of this bell curve. So most people are kind of like 50th percentile. And then you have some outliers who are 90th percentile or 10th percentile on left or right of the bell curve. And what I love so much about the Big Five personality matrix is it's genius. It's so genius. So I don't know like the full stories, and anyone can obviously look this up, but basically a group of very intelligent nerds and geeks got together in a room and they took the entire English language and realized that all adjectives that describe people fall into 5 categories, right? And the acronym is OCEAN.
Oh, okay.
So O for openness to new experience. So people who are adventurous, wow, they're so, daring, they're so courageous, they go wow, they like travel the world. They really, people who are adventurous. And obviously it's a spectrum. So you have more open to new experiences or less open, more closed, right? C for conscientiousness. And it's like, wow, they're so detail oriented. They're so on top of things. They really cross their T's and dot their I's. Yeah. That's conscientiousness. And the opposite would be someone who's a flake. Oh, she's never on time. She's always late. Her car's a mess. It's like she can never find that lipstick shade that she's always looking for, right? So conscientiousness. And then there's extroversion, introversion, which you mentioned earlier, Kamila. Right? So extroverts want to be social and engage and talk and connect, and introverts like their alone time to go inward. So party or no party, right? And A is for agreeableness. And this is like one of my favorite dimensions to talk about, is because there's no such thing as fairness. The most fair would be 51 to 49. Most of us, what we think is fair actually is self-serving, because we're just innately self-serving, and it's not in a bad way, right? That's just human nature. And so sometimes, there's no such thing as a 50-50 trader, and at best you can get 51-49 maybe, but it's probably going to be like, 60-40, maybe 65-35, maybe 70-30. And then 80-20, you start really getting into people who are disagreeable. And so it's good to just note, because a lot of couples fight about fairness. That's not fair. Mm-hmm. I don't find that fair, right? And what they're really saying is, hey, the juice isn't worth the squeeze here. And it's like, hey, they're running a cost benefit analysis, and they're saying this is very expensive and I'm not really getting a lot of benefit out of it. And so we're essentially kind of, the undertone or the baseline is like, we're fighting for resources. We're fighting for attention, energy, affection, getting things we want and we need. And being able to recognize the innate, animal being that we are fighting for these resources underneath it all, that it's all about survival. And just historically speaking, we've lived in a world of scarcity. And that when you put an animal that is built for an environment of scarcity, and you put it in an environment of abundance, all it's going to want to do is eat the donuts and be in pleasure. Because where our bodies are not designed for having high caloric density food, because that stuff didn't grow in the Stone Age. Right.
Donut trees going around.
Yeah. And it's like, there's nothing wrong with any of us. No one's broken. We're all whole, complete, and perfect as we are. And to recognize that we're just operating in a way that's wired for a completely different environment than what we're actually in. Because 90% of the human experience has been in the Stone Age. Only 10% right now that we live in the modern world with technology and the Industrial Revolution and the internet. I mean, things are exponentially booming right now, faster than the evolutionary timeline that we have experienced.
Yeah.
So knowing these pieces is really, really helpful to the clients.
Yeah.
And then the last dimension of the big five is neuroses, which is emotional stability, right? So I know neuroses has like a bit of a negative tone to it. It's like, wow, that person's really neurotic. Mm-hmm. But when they came up with neuroses, they meant it without a charge, or it's not a negative state, but you can just reframe it as like emotional stability. So there are people who can get really happy, feel so much joy, colors are brighter, foods are more delicious, music is like so delightful. They're really happy. But those people who get really happy, they also get really sad. They get really sad, they go into despair, they're super depressed, they're emo, and they can really go to the depths. So these are people who are high neuroses. They have high highs and low lows. And then you have people who are more emotionally stable. They don't have such a wide range, which is nice because they can function through life. And when someone gives them a criticism, it doesn't hurt them so badly. It kind of just, falls off like water in a dolphin. However, they also are a little bit more bored. They don't have such a wide range, right? So there's pros and cons to all of them. None of the big five is this is better or worse, but it's just about, hey, what's my code in how I respond and react to the external world? What's my internal processing? How do I interpret information? How do I work with it in comparison to the rest of the population? Because that's what we care about. We just want to interact with other people. It's not like this arbitrary, random personality matrix, but it's where do you fall on a bell curve in comparison to the rest of the population as you're navigating and figuring out humanity and human relationships.
That is so cool. That is really, I love that ocean. I love it. I'm a mermaid for sure from Maui, so I love this ocean analogy. Yeah, I love it all the way.
We're set on the ocean right now.
I just love it. I was just thinking, and the I love the like genetic coding and the lineage. I was just thinking that I don't know your parents, but I know Camila's parents and I know mine, and I know we both came from very cool parents who were peacemakers. I mean, my parents. My dad was working for world peace, was an international diplomat, writing books about world peace. And I have other people in my lineage who are all about peace. And even my great-great aunt was administrator for the Underground Railroad and helping slaves escape and up to their freedom in Canada. Wow. And lots of professors. And my mom studied comparative world religions at Smith and Harvard and was all about spiritual diplomacy. And Camila's parents are awesome and Sufi teachers and Sufi healers and totally amazing. So it's really, it's a great blessing to be grateful for when we come from pretty high level, parents who genuinely wanted us and genuinely love us and genuinely are willing to grow or apologize or, because everybody can make mistakes, but, oh my gosh. And then some people have had, childhood and there's a more, I don't know, there's more to overcome, but, do you want to speak to that? And we've got about 3 more minutes before we wrap it up and I announce next week.
Yeah, so both of my parents are entrepreneurs. And, my mother's from the Bronx of New York. So she's got that tough East Coast, New York. She's a powerful woman, and in the 70s, she picked up and went to Japan where women didn't do, right? Single women, especially. Mm-hmm. And so she traveled alone. She met my father. And, my mom's 5'8", and my dad's like barely 5 foot. He's like maybe 4'11". And, my mother's side is Jewish. So my very Jewish grandmother says like, what do you mean you're marrying someone shorter than you? Like, like she couldn't even like comprehend. Meanwhile, my grandparents on both sides fought in the war against each other in World War II, right? So America and Japan were not in good terms. And so that alone just shares with you how disagreeable both of my mom and dad are to go against their own culture and their own upbringing of what's acceptable, to pave a new way, to be pioneers, to do something different, right? So I definitely inherit those traits. I'm an entrepreneur and I pioneer a lot of different questionable counterculture, really high openness to new experience. I'm very adventurous and I go to the edges. I'm also highly neurotic. I have high highs and low lows. Yeah. So when my partner says to me, honey, that sounds really bossy and really demanding, right? When I first heard that feedback, it's like, ouch, it's like, that's not the image or the identity I have of myself. I think of myself as like this loving, kind, human being. However, the people closest to you, get to see the best in you, and they also get to see the worst in you.
Yep.
So what if the relationship is a vehicle in which you're hiring your partner to help you see your blind spots that you'll never see, that they can really point out. And as much as we crave and wish that they could say it in the most loving, kind, soft way, they're not always going to. They're going to lack a bedside manner, and they're just going to be very critical and hurtful sometimes. But what if we can hear the criticism or the feedback and really do some emotional, energetic Aikido, take that energy and flip it and say, okay, what are they really asking of me, right? So when my partner calls me bossy or demanding, I get to recognize, hey, you know what? You're right. You're absolutely right. I am bossy and demanding. I come from very powerfully counterculture disagreeable parents. So that's in my genetic code, right? And yes, I'm not all the time bossy or demanding. It's like a certain chip that I have. I can also be soft and sensitive, and I'm highly emotional and relational. So that we're multifaceted, right? But what my partner's really asking of me is he's saying, hey, can you be kinder with me? Can you be softer with me? That's really what he's saying underneath the criticism of your bossy and demanding.
So good.
I love that. I love that you are so honest. It's so great that you can be so honest about your shadow and so honest. It's great. I was going to say, if we can all get a little more courageous to be honest about our shadow and our magnificence, it's great. So I really appreciate your honesty. It gives me courage. It's so on forever. We're getting to the end of the hour, and I just want to thank you so much for being here. And and why don't you say where people can find you, and then I'm going to announce our show for next week.
Beautiful. Yes, find me on Facebook, Riya Yoshida. I have a free Facebook group. It's called Relationship Coaching for Couples in Love. And in my free Facebook group, I give so much content and processes and to really support couples who are in love, figure this thing out. Because if 50% fail, this is a big deal. And we really want to get the couples, whether it's mom and dad or mom and mom or dad and dad, it doesn't matter, right? Or gender non-specific. It's about two people in love. Even if you're in a multiple open relationship, it doesn't matter. It's always two people at a time. How do you really get that interpersonal, rubbing of the two diamonds to become smoother pebbles in the river?
I love that. That is so beautiful. Okay, so I just love what we're all sharing and who we are here, and you can reach out to any of us. We love serving people, and so I'm going to announce our show for next week, and it's always at the same time, Universal Heart Wisdom at 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time and 6 p.m. East Coast Time. And we will be having Dr. Ibrahim Jaffe on next week, who both Kamila and I have worked with, who started the Institute of Spiritual Healing. And he is a Sufi guide and a master spiritual healer. He's also a medical MD doctor and very intuitive. He sees very deeply. And he's been healing for over 40 years. He started a whole school way back, and then had Kamila and I met at his school that was in Northern California. And so he's also been working with, he said when I was just recently talking to him, with over 40,000 illnesses. And so it's really amazing what he does with people. So he will be on next week on this show. And I just want to thank you again, Riya, for being here. And thank you, Kamila, and all that you bring. And we just want to love you up. And please come back next week. It will be very exciting. And please reach out to all three of us. You can find us on Facebook and all the different ways we said that we're available. This show will now become an archive on our pages, and you can share it with your friends. So Thank you. Namaste. So glad you've been
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Riya, so much for joining us today. Your wisdom is much appreciated, and your energy and your spirit are so warmly received and felt. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Blessings.
you so much. Blessings to everyone. Have a beautiful week.